China's foreign policy has changed since President Xi Jinping took power in 2012. Beijing became increasingly forceful on territorial and maritime concern in subsequent years. It took an active role in global governance and pushed for ambitious policies goals. This foreign policy reform showed China's goal to become a global power. The Belt and Road Initiative, Obor, has characterized itself as a strategic initiative that displays China's global ambitions beyond those of a regional power. President Xi Jinping announced the Obor plan in 2013 to connect China to the globe via railways, road, pipelines, and grids. One Belt, One Road Obor intends to enhance China's economy. The Silk Road Economy Belt will connect Europe and Asia with China's help. This strategy connect Asia, Africa, and Europe via land and water to boost regional integration, commerce, and economic growth. As China's economy modernizes, Obor aims to reduce regional inequality. China's investment and contractual cooperation in Belt and Road Initiative Obor Nation total USD 59.5 billion in 2012. 147 countries has joined Obor Initiative. Participating countries are from lower, upper lower, and high income. China believes that Obor will secure its Asian borders. It borders 15 countries, including Afghanistan. The Obor has rich characteristics with large-scale projects. Lack of transparency, weak economic fundamental, and inadequate leadership in certain participating countries might exacerbate these concerns. Sustainability, governance, and societal hazards should be examined. Since late 2013, government officials, entrepreneurs, the media, and specialists have shown interest in the Obor initiative. Diverse opinions exist on the Obor's diplomatic ramifications. Some feel the Obor will increase Beijing global influence, especially in China. Others predict that the Obor will face major challenges and fail. This case study will explore Belt Road Initiative (BRI) challenges, followed with its recommendation and implication.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nona Azizah binti Muhammad Khair. I will present the first issue, which is corruption scandal. Corruption scandal are a common occurrence when it comes to infrastructure projects, especially mega projects. This is due to the fact that large amount of money would be involved in the projects, which will cause it to be more vulnerable to corruption. The China's One Belt and One Road are no exception to this corruption scandal, as there are 47 projects that involve with corruption scandal at the very least among the cooperative countries. For example, the Bishkek power plant in Kyrgyzstan is a $386 million project that was reported for corruption. This project faced problems where the heating system broke down during the winter, which led to locals to be left with no heating. The power plant director was fired on the ground that there had been no preparation made for winter, made statement that it was due to the funds for repairing the power plant was being taken and it was not being used for the repairing purposes. Furthermore, the actual cost for the project was actually $100 million less. This clearly shows that there are corruption happen. Additionally, there is also scandal of Chinese officials involved with the 1MDB scandal, where the Chinese would bail out the former Prime Minister of Malaysia in exchange for stakes on projects of railways and pipeline that are related to the China's One Belt and One Road initiative. Moreover, it was also found out by the Anti-Corruption Commission that the contract signed by the project for the China's One Belt and One Road initiative was overpriced. The overpriced contract was for the purpose of using the extra money from the project to pay the 1MDB debt. This would show that the former Prime Minister misused their power for their own benefit. Due to these corruption scandals that was made public, the cooperative countries are starting to be worried and hesitate on continuing the project with China, and there are also countries that stop the progress of the project.
The second issue is territorial and security conflict. Due to history, there are many territorial conflicts in the Obor region, and dispute settlement affect Obor security guarantee. One of the conflict is South China Sea. Several nations, including Brunei, the People's Republic China, Taiwan, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam have overlapping island and territory claims in the South China Sea. Some regional countries have serious national security concerning to Obor with China. Regional elites worry China may utilize BRI Maritime Cooperation to strengthen its influence in the disputes South China Sea. Despite diplomatic backing for the BRI, Vietnam is skeptical about its economy and geopolitical consequences due to historical enmity and South China Sea concerns. Execution of BRI project has been sluggish. Even though Indonesia has no rival sovereignty claims in the South China Sea, it is wary of China's economic and political influence. China cannot find a solution acceptable to most sides to defuse the situation in the medium term. Several territorial conflicts remain unresolved, such as Kashmir dispute between India and Pakistan, Sino-Indian border conflict, and the Palestine-Israel territorial problem are significant and unresolved. The border between these two countries is undefined. Varuf is Tajikistan territory in Kyrgyzstan, which 911 km of the boundary between the two countries are marked. Both countries differ on more than 70 issues. During the first Obor summit, Indian Prime Minister Modi withdrew from the proposal due to dispute region along the China-Pakistan corridor. This project travelled through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, POK, a source of contention between India and Pakistan. India has the right to reject the China's proposal. This effort breached India's sovereignty because POK is Indian territory. New Delhi also stressed economic responsibility to promote ecological and environmental preservation, as well as openness in monitoring project expenditure, technology transfer, and others. India sees the project as a smokescreen China may exploit to get access to the Indian Ocean, which would threaten its security. China's participation in the region is part of its ambition to strategically surround India, and the economic corridor is a political tactic. India did not join the initiative because One Belt One Road, Obor, does not address the region's security and political issues. Sri Lanka agreed with those who oppose CPEC because it will harm India's interests. Germany and the US President back up India's action against China. The President of US, Obama, said regional economic cooperation must be strengthened while sovereignty and territorial integrity are preserved. Countries like India have criticized Obor for threatening their security and sovereignty. Thus, China should settle its territorial dispute before discussing growth with other countries.
My name is Rose and I will be presenting on the debt trap conspiracy. Well, the China's Obor have another issues which is debt trap. And well, actually Beijing, China have been criticized by so many countries because they actually use its finance and project infrastructure project Obor to trap poor countries with huge amount of debt, and China somehow gain advantage by doing so. And one of thing is that many participating countries that involved in China's Obor are from low income and middle income countries, as we can see in the figure above, and obviously they are financially fragile. And all these countries, as we know, need money to develop their country. Then China comes with a huge amount of money with their Obor project, at the same time developing the host country with a win-win situation, they said. Of course, these fragile countries will probably accept to take the loan with the thought of developing their own countries. And well, actually some loan need security in form of like assets, as well as hidden condition and agreement in their loan, and that might not be known by the public. This is what we call debt trap. So what will happen if the country could not pay back the loan? Like, this is what actually have happened to Sri Lanka, where they failed to pay the loan and need to give their Hambantota port to China for 99 years.
The first factor of the issue is lack of transparency. In mega projects, transparency are a very important aspect, as it could prevent any illicit practice. Because of that, the public procurement project would be required to be made public and open tendering. Open tendering would allow proposals from the companies to be reviewed by the government and ensure prices are reasonable. This is hardly the case with China's One Belt and One Road initiative, as there are lack of project that was made known to the public, and it caused the process of procurement remain vague. An example for this would be the case that have been mentioned in the issue, which is the Kyrgyzstan Bishkek thermal power plant. The Kyrgyzstan's law required any public procurement that are participated by companies would need to be tendered, but it was refused by the government. Additionally, the lack of transparency could also be part of the lack of action taken by China, as it maintained non-interference on scandals that was committed by Chinese companies in foreign land. Although China has severe punishment for corruption committed domestically, it is not the same for any illicit practices committed outside of China, as according to Transparency International Index, as opposed to other countries such as United States that have law to fight corruption in foreign land, China have no such law, and adding that to China not being proactive in dealing with corruption committed outside of China, it increased the chances of the companies to be involved with corruption. Moving on, the participation of the countries in China's One Belt and One Road, that a majority of it are ranked in lower rank of Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, also contribute to the lack of transparency. The index will be measure the risk for corruption to happen within the country, and the higher the measurement of the index, the higher the chances of the corruption to happen. According to Malik et al. 2021, majority of the participating countries in the initiative are in the lower rank, which raised the risk for the project to be vulnerable to corruption. An example is Kenya, which is ranked 144 out of 180 countries in the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index. This would be inevitable for Kenya to be more vulnerable to corruption. The case in Kenya involved railway project, which is Bambosa-Nairobi standard gauge railway that cost 3.8 billion, that are considered as unreasonable amount. The case was found by the public prosecutor to have significant corruption that shows concrete evidence of fraudulent of land acquisition. Therefore, it is very important for projects that involve large amount of money, especially countries that are in the lower rank of the Transparency Index, to have effective policy to prevent the scandal from happening.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurul Izzah binti A. Aziz, and now I'm going to explain the factor that caused the issue of One Belt, One Road arise. The next factor that caused the issue of One Belt, One Road, Obor, to arise is due to the political instability of the joint countries or regions. One of the definitions is the tendency for a nation or government to change due to political upheaval and violence happens, such as war, assassination, protest, and strike. Political instability can happen due to internal or external pressure. As for this context, the issue of One Belt, One Road, which is territorial and security conflict, is due to the internal problems of these participating countries. Political instability also may cause China to face significant financial costs as a developer. According to the Economist Intelligence Unit, since many of the Obor projects are expected to be high-cost project, the governments of the joint or destination countries will be heavily involved in the negotiation. Therefore, the political changes in those countries need to be predicted to happen, because it can change on how the negotiation of the deals turn out. As an example, due to the changes of government in Sri Lanka, where a new prime minister has decided to halt the 1.4 billion US dollar port project after his government gets into power. Mr. Sirisena has decided to suspend the huge infrastructure projects dealt by previous Prime Minister with the Chinese government. Not only that, the new reformist Myanmar government also decided to halt and suspend a project of My It's One hydroelectrical dam in 2011. This action has caused many Chinese developers to face problems due to the inability to repay the loans. Some projects of One Belt, One Road, Obor, also came into failure because of the nationalism agenda of the citizens from the participating countries. Nationalism can be defined as an ideology in terms of the sense of superiority where people sincerely feel that their nation is better than the other nations. From the political view, nationalism seeks to maintain nation sovereignty where the government should be able and have the right to self-govern as well as able to protect the nation from the social, political and cultural influences brought by external countries. When there is concern over social issues, the potential of the nationalists to protest the government decision on the foreign investment are high. As an example, in 2010, small anti-Chinese rallies happened in Almaty due to the decision of the Kazakhstan government to sell agricultural land to China. The Kazakhs were all afraid that their country would be invaded by the Chinese government through the investment made between these two countries. The action of the government during that time who sell their land to the Chinese has brought huge dissatisfaction and resentment of the Kazakhs. Due to the huge protests that happened in this large city, the government has decided to take the nationalist agenda issue seriously in order to decrease the anger of the nationalist group.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Nik Muhammad Dani Ashraf bin Tajuddin. I am presenting about effect new version of colonialism. Okay, first of all, what is colonialism? Colonialism is a practice of domination which involve the conquest of one people to another. It can be challenging to distinguish colonialism for imperialism, which is one of the challenging of defining it. Frequently, the two ideas are used interchangeably. Imperialism also involves exercising political and economic authority over a dependent territory. But there are some hints regarding on how the two names differ from one another in etymologies. The Latin word colonus, which means farmer, is where the word colony originates. This root serves as a helpful reminder that the process of colonialism typically involves the relocation of people to a new area where they establish permanent settlement with retaining political allegiance to their home nation. Okay, what is the effect of new colonialism? New version of colonialism seems unfair because every country have different ability to compete. Poor country are unable to compete with rich country who are labeled as developed country. Therefore, fair trade seems important to every country. As an example, Sri Lanka's multi-billion dollar debt to Beijing threatens to hinder effort to resolve a financial crisis so severe that the Indian Ocean nation cannot import food or gasoline. The situation in Sri Lanka is extreme, but it is representative of dozens of nations that have endorsed Chinese President Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. From South Pacific Island to some of the poorest in Asia and Africa, a growing portion of poorer nations that is putting others at danger of financial crisis. What happened to Sri Lanka? Chinese aid is appreciated in Sri Lanka and other developing Asian nations. According to the Asian Development Bank, the region needs to invest 1.7 trillion US dollar in infrastructure each year to maintain economic expansions. However, some claim that China initiatives are either too expensive or insufficient use to their economics, especially Sri Lanka's, who protest to their government spending 10% of Sri Lanka's debt is owed to China, which is country's third largest creditor after Japan, but Xi's administration has power to seriously scuttle any agreement. Okay, what is Laos also burdened with China's debt? Okay, according to news, which is heavily Laos, which is heavily indebted to China, significant infrastructure project faces a high chances of defaulting on its debt, which is made worse by the economic hardship brought on by the coronavirus and conflict in Ukraine and Russia. Preliminary estimates indicated that Laos' total public and publicly guaranteed debt will equal 88% of its GDP in 2021, according to World Bank assessment released in April. But about half of the 14.5 billion US dollar debt, which was acquired through loans to finance initiative like the China's Laos Railway, is owing to China. And is Pakistan will also follow Sri Lanka. Yes, China's latest demand for repayment of USD 55.6 million for Lahore Orange Line project by November 2023 caused further harm to Pakistan's already ailing economy. As a result, the repayment of external debt, the State Bank of Pakistan Foreign Exchange Reserve at the end of March decreased significantly by USD 2.915 billion. As a result, Pakistan's economic future seems dismal in terms of its connection with China. Regarding the repayment of its loans and their investment in Pakistan, China has struck a difficult deal with Pakistan. For the use of USD 4.5 billion Chinese trade credit facility, Pakistan paid China around 150 million US dollar in interest for the fiscal year 2021 to 2022. Pakistan paid 120 million US dollar in interest on loan totaling USD 3 billion in the 2019 and 2000 until 2020 fiscal year. That's all from me. Thank you.
I'm Muhammad Taufik Begidin. I will be speaking about recommendation. Why China need to improve and increase procurement practice? It is because when it comes to high quality public procurement, transparency is one of the most important principles. So by applying procurement practice, it will increase transparency of the One Belt and One Road project. The prudent use of limited development fund is facilitated by transparency, which help with both the planning of investment in advance and the measurement of the result. The procurement process should be open and transparent to encourage competition, ensure value for money, increase efficiency, and limit the risk of unfairness of corruption. How One Belt and One Road project can improve procurement practice is by three tracks. Firstly, by focusing on what China might do, the easiest path is an unilateral decision that BRI project funded by a Chinese public entity will use international good practice on competition and transparency. An example of such practice might be for China to require international competitive bidding (ICB) in the award of BRI project above a certain value threshold, and for BRI host countries to demand that open and transparent competition be the basis for participation in BRI project. Another option is for BRI project beyond the threshold to be awarded through open national competition among Chinese companies, including foreign investment enterprise. Moving to the second route, borrowing countries can consider option to make the BRI procurement process more inclusive and competitive. They can seek to apply state procurement laws to BRI acquisition, negotiate balancing or set local content target for BRI project they borrow. The third option is to consider multilateral cooperation between BRI countries. Participation in the GPA is probably the easiest step available for China and its BRI partner. Given that only 1/3 of the BRI economy is a member of the GPA, participation in the GPA will also equalize in terms of participation in contract binding, in part of offering opportunities to foreign firms to challenge BRI procurement process that violate GPA provision. Further, the GPA provide a solid foundation for transparency and encompasses a set of rules that are generally considered to shape international good practice and provide a platform for resolving dispute about procurement practice.
One of the recommendations to solve the territorial and security disputes between China and the other participating countries of One Belt, One Road initiative is by creating more policies that focus on the interests of participating countries. China needs to come up with a new policy that could instill trust, confidence, and assurance on the participating countries, especially regarding the territorial and security disputes. Due to the previous issue on the territorial matters between regions, most countries have lost their trust on this initiative. As mentioned, many countries have suspended their projects due to the lack of incompetency shown by Chinese government. In this context, sovereignty is the most important matter to all independent countries. According to political theory, sovereignty is the ultimate authorization over the state's decision-making process and the upkeep of order. In simple words, sovereignty can be defined as the supreme power given to the group of people to govern a country within their territorial regions. In order to give assurance to the current participating countries and attract more countries to join this initiative, China needs to enhance the principle of sovereignty, putting aside the differences and pursuing mutual advancement. Not only that, China also needs to comply and obey the principle of non-interferences of other countries' internal affairs. Back to the definition of sovereignty, all decisions regarding a country lie in the hand of the leader or government that governs that respected countries. Even though through this initiative, China has become a major creditor for the particular country, China should not cross the line by interfering in the internal affairs of the debtor country. China can serve a constructive role by bringing participating countries together when these countries are faced with political unrest to maintain regional stability. As an example, relating to the disputes between China and India, India seeks for a better definition of stakeholders, aims and projects from China. One of the reasons on why India against cooperation with China is because they feel that the loans and the investments offered by China is being used for political independence and sovereignty of India was put on the line. Therefore, offering policy that focusing on the interests of the participating countries will give benefits to both countries, as the participating countries will achieve developments they aim, while this One Belt and One Road initiative of China will be successful.
And next is how China and recipient country can improve better governance and always establish more sustainable bilateral relations by using policymakers. Firstly, Chinese policymakers should improve project governance and SOE regulation. China usually plan and weekly government development funding system provide poor result at tremendous expense, provoking pushback against China. Chinese policymaker has worked to improve governance and strengthen ties with non-government groups in partner nations. They must do more. Instead of a multi-agency negotiation system, it needs a coherent, integrated decision-making process with adequate risk assessment and stringent, explicit, enforced norms. This requires addressing vested interests in China, especially among commercial agencies and SOE sector. Secondly, recipient state policymakers should improve their capacity to evaluate, negotiate, and regulate BRI projects. China won't do due diligence for recipient governance. Since Chinese development financing is a recipient lead, governments must ensure programs are viable and sustainable. They must also bargain harder and more judiciously with profit-driven Chinese partners and lead in guaranteeing local development benefit. Open tendering reduce corruption. Since Chinese rules rely on host country governance, receivers must strengthen their domestic legislation and inspection and enforcement capacity to prevent social and environmental consequences. Thirdly, policymakers in other states adopt a more realistic understanding of an appropriate response to the BRI project, which means do not respond to the BRI as a geopolitical strategy. If policymakers in other countries continue to assume that the fragmented activities comprising the BRI are directed from the top down as a part of coordinated grand strategy, they will formulate unnecessarily hostile and counterproductive response. Just strategic reading of the BRI insists balancing strategies like the free and open Indo-Pacific, seeking to cup a Chinese offensive that the BRI does not really constitute. This is seen by Beijing as evidence a relentless Western hostility, fueling a conflict spiral and increasing the risk of great power confrontation. It also alienates developing countries keen to develop their infrastructure but receiving no Western assistance. Next is provide alternative development financial. Wealthy countries should provide better alternative. Traditional donor abandonment of infrastructure development in favor of dubious good governance program created the space for China's unique offer to developing countries. Clearly, China offer what many traditional donors should not, the debt finance implementation of sometimes apparently senseless project. Often coupled with kickback nonetheless, China also offer a less risk-averse materialist approach to development with tangible benefit. Other states should follow suit and could even partner with China on specific project to strengthen governance standards, as seen with the establishment of the AIIB. Lastly, engage recipient and China to improve BRI governance. Donors should support recipient countries to strengthen their development governance system and engage China in dialogue to bring Chinese development financing closer to international standards. The AIIB could represent a potential entry point, also a marginal player within China development financing system. It is the only platform where Chinese and other donor state officials interact regularly.
To conclude, the China's One Belt, One Road Obor project is indeed a massive step in elevating the global economy to an unimaginable level that no one have ever been taught before. Despite the fact that some of the projects have been dropped, the idea will still continue to strengthen the ties, collaboration, intergovernmental relations, and interdependence among the nations participating. In the end, this expanding interconnection and its implication have China at the center and firmly strengthening it as the major regional force and a place among the world's most influential leaders. And once again, Obor plan is indeed a truly game changer for China to be a leading role in both the global and regional arenas.